All right, let's talk about some of the features here. Now, in the green here, we've got the two 2x6s. Those are the bearing locations. That is denoted graphically on the truss. Now, if there was a cantilever here, you'd see that towards the interior of the truss, but it's not. It's a standard, typical, exterior walls are going to be the bearing for this truss. It calls it out there. Beyond that, we also want to talk about the pitch. Now, we've got a 612 pitch, and it's kind of got that triangle there. So it's 6 inches of rise for every 12 inches of run. Now, one thing that the truss industry has done a really good job of is standardizing that 12 inches. Now, that is 1 foot, 12 inches. That's kind of the common denominator amongst all the different roof pitches. So you could see 10, 12, 12, 12, 16, 12. All of it's going to end in a 12. And that way we have something to kind of revert back to, as opposed to saying 6/5. That math gets a little tricky, some of the other things. So you could see anything from a 0/12, which would be a flat pitch, to all the way up to, a 24/12 if it's a very steep. But all of it comes back to that 12. Now, in order to, understand what it is, sometimes I see 12/6 or some kind of, people that aren't really aware of how to communicate that. It's always going to be the rise first. So that 6, 5, 8, 10, whatever it is, over 12. 12 comes second. There's going to be a few different ways to describe it, but hopefully you'll be able to do a little bit better job on that and know what is industry standard as far as reading off pitch. Beyond that, the overhang. Now, we've got an overhang over here on the left and the right, but that's the distance that the tail of the truss, or the tail of the top cord, extends horizontally out from the bearing. And in this case, we've got a measurement there of 16 inches, or the 1'4". That is the overhang. That can be trimmed back a little bit if you need to adjust for some fascia. I always say make sure you don't get into cutting anything near that plate. That's when you're altering the engineering of the truss. But out there to line up your tails, make sure you got a good fascia line there. That is appropriate and able to do that. Beyond that, the heel height, which we've also got called out on the left there at 10 inches. I'll erase some of this. So we've got it called out there. That's the vertical distance from the bearing to the top of the truss. And that's straight up and down if you were to hang a plumb bob. And that is that dimension. Now, that can be, one of the things that everything else can be correct about the truss. 28-foot span, the overhang, the pitch. And if you have varying heel heights, you can have different heights of your trusses and they're not going to match. So heel height is one of those that often goes overlooked and should be, a little bit more prominent. I'd appreciate if the architects and the engineers or whomever's designing the buildings would call that out more often, just to get it specific, because it can create some problems, especially if you've got altering heel heights or different pitches coming together, with the planes. But beyond that, that's kind of the features of the truss. We'll get on to the next video.